There comes a moment in every relationship when what you see on the surface is not the whole story. Most people make decisions based on behavior alone. They see distance, silence, hesitation, and emotional withdrawal, and they immediately assume the worst. They think, if they loved me, they wouldn't act this way. But life is rarely that simple. Human beings are driven not only by love, but also by fear. And sometimes the greatest battle is not between two people. Sometimes it is between love and fear inside the same person. If you are with someone who has avoidant tendencies, you have probably felt confused more times than you can count. One day they seem close. The next day they seem distant. One moment they are opening their heart, and the next they are pulling away. Most people see this pattern and decide to leave. They interpret the withdrawal as rejection. They assume the relationship has reached its end. But there is a psychological shift that changes everything. When an avoidant partner truly loves you, something remarkable begins to happen. The fear that once controlled them starts losing its grip. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Not overnight. But little by little, the walls begin to crack. Understand this. An avoidant person is not running because they do not feel. In many cases, they are running because they feel too much. Intimacy creates vulnerability. Vulnerability creates uncertainty. And uncertainty activates fear. Their entire life may have been built around protecting themselves from emotional pain. Yet when love becomes stronger than fear, a transformation begins. You notice them staying in conversations they would normally escape. You notice them listening longer. You notice them becoming uncomfortable, but not leaving. You notice them making efforts that seem small to others but represent enormous victories for them. That is the shift. Most people miss it because they are looking for grand gestures. They want dramatic declarations of love. They want certainty. They want guarantees. But real transformation often arrives quietly. The avoidant partner who once disappeared for days now checks in consistently. The person who avoided emotional discussions now attempts to have them. The individual who once kept every feeling locked away starts revealing pieces of their inner world. Those moments matter, because every act of vulnerability is a risk for someone who has spent years protecting selves. Think about this. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting despite fear. When an avoidant partner chooses connection while still feeling afraid, that is courage. When they stay present during difficult conversations instead of shutting down, that is courage. When they reveal emotions they have hidden for years, that is courage. Do not underestimate the significance of those changes. Love is not measured solely by how comfortable someone feels expressing it. Love is measured by what they are willing to overcome for it. And here's where many relationships fall apart. The avoidant partner finally begins fighting their internal battles, finally starts lowering defenses, finally starts taking emotional risks. And right at that moment, the other person leaves, because they expected perfection instead of progress. Progress is the miracle. Nobody grows in a straight line. Nobody heals perfectly. Nobody transforms without setbacks. The question is not whether they still struggle. The question is whether they are moving toward connection or away from it. When someone who spent years running begins turning around and walking back toward love, pay attention. That is not weakness. That is growth. You see, every human being carries wounds. Some people respond to pain by clinging tighter. Others respond by pulling away. Neither response is ideal. Both are survival mechanisms. The avoidant individual learned long ago that emotional dependence felt dangerous. So they built walls. They became self-reliant, independent, detached. The tragedy is that the very defenses that once protected them eventually become prisons. Then love enters their life. And suddenly those walls no longer feel like protection. They feel like barriers separating them from the person they care about most. That realization creates tremendous internal conflict. Part of them wants safety. Part of them wants connection. Part of them wants control. Part of them wants intimacy. And when love is real, intimacy slowly begins winning. That is the psychological shift you cannot afford to ignore. Because once an avoidant partner reaches that stage, they are fighting battles you cannot always see. They are challenging beliefs that may have existed for decades. They are questioning old survival strategies. They are confronting fears that once seemed impossible to overcome. and every step they take toward emotional openness represents a victory over their past. Now, this does not mean accepting unhealthy behavior forever. It does not mean abandoning your own needs. It does not mean tolerating disrespect. Healthy love always requires boundaries, respect, and mutual effort. But if you notice genuine change, genuine effort, genuine growth, do not throw it away simply because the process is imperfect. Growth is messy. Healing is messy. Love is messy. What matters is direction. Are they moving toward greater honesty? Are they becoming more emotionally available? Are they making efforts they never made before? Are they choosing connection more often than avoidance? If the answer is yes, something profound is happening. The person who once feared intimacy is learning to trust it. The person who once avoided vulnerability is discovering its power. The person who once ran from love is beginning to stand still long enough to receive it. And that journey deserves recognition. Because real love is not just about finding the right person. It is about becoming the right person. It is about growth. It is about transformation. It is about two imperfect human beings choosing each other while they continue evolving. The greatest relationships are not built by people who never struggle. They are built by people who refuse to let struggle define them. So if you notice this psychological shift in your avoidant partner, if you see them lowering walls, choosing connection, revealing vulnerability, and fighting old patterns, do not be too quick to walk away. You may be witnessing one of the rarest and most beautiful transformations a human being can corn. The moment when fear no longer leads. The moment when courage takes its place. The moment when someone who spent years protecting their heart finally decides that love is worth the risk. And when that happens, something extraordinary becomes possible. Not a perfect relationship, something far more valuable. A real one. One of the most significant signs that an avoidant partner truly loves you is when they begin allowing you to see parts of themselves they have spent years hiding from the world. This may not seem extraordinary at first glance, especially if you are someone who naturally shares your feelings and emotions. But for an avoidant person, vulnerability can feel incredibly uncomfortable. Their instinct has often been to protect themselves by keeping emotional distance, maintaining control, and avoiding situations where they might feel exposed. That is why the moment they start opening up, even in small ways, it represents a profound internal shift. An avoidant partner does not usually wake up one day and suddenly reveal every fear, insecurity, and painful memory they have ever carried. The process is much slower than that. It often begins with small disclosures. They may tell you about a disappointment from their past. They may admit that they struggle with trust. They may reveal a fear of rejection that they rarely acknowledge, even to themselves. These conversations may seem ordinary, but for them, they are taking a tremendous emotional risk. For years, they may have believed that showing weakness would lead to pain. Perhaps they learned early in life that emotions were ignored, criticized, or dismissed. Maybe they experienced situations where vulnerability resulted in disappointment or heartbreak. As a result, they developed a strategy of self-protection. They convinced themselves that if they kept their emotions hidden, they could avoid being hurt. The problem is that while this strategy may protect them from pain, it also prevents deep connection. Genuine intimacy requires emotional honesty, and emotional honesty requires vulnerability. When an avoidant partner begins sharing their inner world with you, they are doing something that goes against their natural defense mechanisms. They are choosing connection over protection. They are allowing another person to see parts of them that they once considered unsafe to reveal. This does not happen unless there is a significant level of trust and emotional investment. You may notice them talking more openly about their worries and concerns. Instead of pretending everything is fine, they start admitting when something is bothering them. They may tell you when they feel overwhelmed, uncertain, or afraid. These moments are important because they indicate that they no longer feel the need to carry every burden alone. They are beginning to trust that you can handle their truth without judging or abandoning them. Another powerful sign is when they start sharing their insecurities. Avoidant individuals often work hard to appear independent and self-sufficient. They may project strength and confidence while quietly battling self-doubt beneath the surface. When they begin revealing these insecurities, they are allowing you to see the person behind the mask. They are no longer trying to maintain a perfect image. Instead, They are letting you witness their humanity. You may also notice that they become more comfortable discussing their emotional experiences. Conversations that once felt impossible start happening naturally. They may talk about past relationships, childhood experiences, personal regrets, or moments that shaped their outlook on life. These discussions are not simply exchanges of information. They are acts of trust. They are invitations into parts of their life that they once kept locked away. What makes this shift especially meaningful is that it often occurs despite fear, not because the fear has disappeared. The avoidant partner may still feel nervous about opening up. They may still worry about being misunderstood or hurt. Yet they choose to take the risk anyway. That willingness to move through discomfort is a powerful indicator of emotional growth and genuine affection. Love has a unique way of challenging old defenses. It encourages people to step beyond the limits of their comfort zones. For an avoidant partner, allowing someone to see their vulnerabilities is one of the greatest challenges they can face. Every honest conversation, every emotional confession, and every moment of openness is evidence that they are choosing connection over isolation. They are gradually lowering walls that may have taken years to build, not because they have stopped being cautious, but because the relationship has become more important than the safety those walls once provided. One of the clearest psychological shifts that occurs when an avoidant partner truly loves you and emotional growth. Avoidant individuals often have a strong instinct to withdraw when emotions become overwhelming. When conflict arises, when vulnerability increases, or when intimacy deepens, their first reaction may be to create distance. They might become quiet, emotionally unavailable, or physically absent. This behavior is not always a sign that they no longer care. In many cases, it is a coping mechanism developed over years of trying to protect themselves from emotional discomfort or potential rejection. Because of this pattern, one of the most significant signs of genuine love is when they begin resisting the urge to run. Instead of immediately shutting down, they stay engaged. Instead of disappearing after a difficult conversation, they remain present. Instead of creating distance whenever emotions become intense, they make an effort to move closer. These moments may seem simple to someone with a secure attachment style, but for an avoidant partner, they represent major personal victories. You may notice that disagreements no longer cause them to completely withdraw from the relationship. In the past, conflict might have triggered days of silence or emotional disconnection. Now they may still need time to process their feelings, but they return to the conversation. They make an effort to resolve issues rather than escape them. This shift demonstrates that maintaining the connection has become more important than avoiding temporary discomfort. Another powerful sign is their increased willingness to participate in emotionally meaningful conversations. Avoidant individuals often prefer discussing practical matters rather than emotions. Deep emotional discussions can make them feel exposed and vulnerable. However, when they truly care about someone, they begin pushing through that discomfort. They start asking questions, sharing thoughts, and listening more attentively. They may not always know the perfect words to say, but their effort to remain emotionally present speaks volumes. Choosing connection over distance also becomes visible through consistency. In the past, they may have appeared unpredictable, alternating between closeness and withdrawal. As their feelings deepen and their trust grows, they begin creating more stability. They check in more regularly. They communicate more openly. They make plans and follow through on them. These actions reflect a growing desire to strengthen the bond rather than keep it at arm's length. One of the most meaningful aspects of this transformation is that it often occurs during moments when distance would be easier. Anyone can be present when everything is comfortable and enjoyable. The true test comes during moments of stress, uncertainty, or emotional intensity. When an avoidant partner chooses to stay connected during these challenging times, it demonstrates a level of commitment that should not be overlooked. You may notice them reaching out after an argument, rather than waiting indefinitely for the tension to disappear. You may find them expressing concern when they sense you are upset, instead of pretending nothing is wrong. You may see them making efforts to understand your feelings even when emotional conversations feel unfamiliar to them. These actions reveal that they are actively prioritizing the relationship over their old patterns of self-protection. What makes this shift so powerful is that it often requires them to challenge deeply rooted beliefs. Many avoidant individuals learned early in life that dependence on others was risky. They convinced themselves that emotional self-sufficiency was the safest path. As a result, choosing connection requires them to confront fears that have influenced their first behavior for years. It means accepting that closeness does not always lead to pain. It means trusting another person enough to remain present even when vulnerability feels uncomfortable. The decision to choose connection over distance is ultimately a sign that love is becoming stronger than fear. It shows that the relationship has become valuable enough for them to risk emotional exposure every time they stay present instead of withdrawing, every time they communicate instead of avoiding, and every time they move closer rather than creating space. They are demonstrating a profound change. They are no longer allowing fear to make every decision. They are learning that true intimacy is not something to escape from, but something worth building, protecting, and nurturing. One of the most revealing psychological shifts in an avoidant partner occurs when their fear of losing you begins to surface. This is a powerful moment because avoidant individuals are often experts at hiding how much they care. They have spent years convincing themselves that emotional independence is strength, and that needing someone creates vulnerability. As a result, they often suppress feelings of attachment and avoid openly expressing how deeply a relationship affects them. Yet when love becomes genuine and meaningful, something starts to change. The possibility of losing the person they care about begins to feel real, and that reality becomes impossible to ignore. An avoidant partner may not express this fear in dramatic or obvious ways. They may never deliver an emotional speech or openly admit how terrified they are of losing the relationship. In fact, their fear often reveals itself through subtle behaviors rather than direct words. The key is learning to recognize these signs. You may notice that they become more attentive when they sense distance between the two of you. In the past, they might have ignored emotional disconnect or convinced themselves it did not matter. Now they seem more aware of changes in the relationship. They notice when communication feels different. They become sensitive to signs that you are upset, frustrated, or pulling away. This heightened awareness often reflects an underlying concern that they could lose something that has become deeply important to them. Another sign is their increased effort to maintain contact. Avoidant individuals often value space and independence, but when they genuinely love someone, they begin seeking reassurance that the connection remains intact. They may check in more frequently. They may reach out unexpectedly. They may look for reasons to stay connected even when there is no practical need to do so. These actions are often driven by a desire to preserve the bond and prevent emotional distance from growing. You may also notice changes in how they respond to conflict. In the past, disagreements may have led them to withdraw completely. They might have avoided conversations or created emotional distance as a way to protect themselves. However, when the fear of losing you becomes stronger, their behavior begins to shift. They become more willing to repair misunderstandings. They may return to difficult conversations more quickly. They make greater efforts to resolve issues because the idea of allowing the relationship to deteriorate becomes increasingly uncomfortable. One of the most significant indicators is when they start showing concern about your future time together. Avoidant partners often focus heavily on the present because thinking too far ahead can feel overwhelming. Yet when they truly value the relationship, they begin considering what life would look like without you. This realization can create a powerful emotional response. They start thinking about long-term possibilities. They become more interested in shared goals, future plans, and maintaining stability within the relationship. What makes this shift especially meaningful is that it reflects a change in priorities. For much of their life, self-protection may have been their primary focus. They avoided vulnerability because it felt safer than risking emotional pain. But when they begin fearing the loss of someone they love, the relationship itself becomes more important than maintaining perfect emotional control. The need to protect the connection starts outweighing the need to protect themselves. This fear can also manifest in moments of unexpected honesty. An avoidant partner who rarely discusses emotions may suddenly admit that they missed you. They may express appreciation more openly. They may reveal concerns about the relationship that they previously kept hidden. These moments often emerge because the possibility of losing you forces them to confront feelings they can no longer suppress. It is important to understand that this fear does not necessarily make them possessive or controlling. Healthy fear of loss is not about ownership. It is about recognizing value. When someone realizes that another person has become an important part of their emotional world, the thought of losing that connection naturally creates concern. For avoidant individuals, this realization can be particularly profound because it challenges long-standing beliefs about independence and self-reliance. The most powerful aspect of this shift is that it demonstrates emotional investment. It reveals that the relationship is no longer something they can easily walk away from without consequences. Their heart has become involved. Their future has become connected to yours in ways they may never have expected. Every effort they make to protect the relationship, every attempt to repair distance, and every sign of concern about losing you reflects a deeper truth. Beneath their guarded exterior, they have allowed themselves to care more than they ever intended, and that care is now strong, enough to influence their actions in ways that cannot be hidden forever. One of the strongest indicators that an avoidant partner truly loves you is the emergence of consistency and reliability in their behavior. This shift may not attract immediate attention because it often develops gradually, but it represents one of the most meaningful changes an avoidant individual can make. While grand romantic gestures can be impressive, consistency is what ultimately builds trust, emotional safety, and lasting connection. When an avoidant partner begins showing up consistently, they are demonstrating that the relationship has become important enough to challenge old habits and patterns. Avoidant individuals often struggle with consistency because emotional closeness can feel overwhelming. When relationships become too intense, their natural instinct may be to pull back and create space. This can result in periods of emotional distance, unpredictable communication, or behavior that leaves their partner feeling uncertain about where they stand. While this pattern is often driven by fear rather than lack of affection, it can still create confusion and instability within the relationship. When genuine love begins to deepen, however, something starts to change. The avoidant partner realizes that maintaining a healthy connection requires more than feelings. It requires presence. It requires dependability. It requires actions that consistently reinforce trust. As a result, they begin making deliberate efforts to become more reliable. One of the first signs of this transformation is improved communication. In the past, they may have disappeared during stressful periods or taken a long time to respond without explanation. As they become more invested in the relationship, they start recognizing how these behaviors affect their partner. They begin communicating more regularly. Even if they still need occasional space, they become more transparent about it. Instead of vanishing, they explain what they are experiencing and reassure their partner that the connection remains important. Another sign is their willingness to follow through on commitments. Avoidant individuals sometimes hesitate to make promises because commitments can feel like a loss of freedom or control. Yet when they truly value the relationship, they start honoring their commitments more consistently. If they say they will call, they call. If they make plans, they make an effort to keep them. If they commit to working on a problem, they actively participate in finding solutions. These actions may appear simple, but they represent a significant shift from avoidance to accountability. Reliability also becomes evident during difficult times. Anyone can be present when a relationship is easy and enjoyable. The real test comes when challenges arise. When an avoidant partner genuinely loves you, they begin showing up during moments when their old instincts would have encouraged withdrawal. They stay engaged during disagreements. They support you when you are struggling. They remain involved even when emotions become complicated or uncomfortable. This consistency creates something every healthy relationship needs: emotional safety. Emotional safety develops when people know they can depend on each other. It comes from repeated experiences that build confidence and trust over time. When an avoidant partner becomes more reliable, they are helping create an environment where both people feel secure enough to be authentic. You may notice that their actions begin matching their words more closely. In the past, they may have cared deeply but struggled to demonstrate it consistently. Their feelings were genuine, but their behavior did not always reflect those feelings. As they grow emotionally, this gap begins to close. Their affection becomes visible not only through occasional expressions of love but through everyday actions that communicate commitment and care. Another important aspect of this shift is that it often requires tremendous effort. Consistency may come naturally to some people, but for an avoidant individual, it can involve challenging years of learned behavior. They are not simply changing routines, they are rewriting internal beliefs about relationships, trust, and vulnerability. Every time they choose reliability over withdrawal, they are reinforcing a healthier pattern. The beauty of consistency is that it speaks louder than promises. Words can be inspiring, but repeated actions reveal true intentions. When an avoidant partner starts showing up regularly, maintaining communication, honoring commitments, and remaining emotionally present, they are sending a powerful message. They are saying that the relationship matters enough to deserve effort. They are saying that your presence in their life is worth protecting. They are saying that they are willing to move beyond old fears in order to build something lasting. This transformation does not happen because they suddenly become a different person. It happens because their priorities change. The desire to preserve the relationship becomes stronger than the desire to retreat into old patterns. Over time, their consistency becomes evidence of something deeper than attraction or temporary emotion. It becomes evidence of commitment, growth, and a love that is expressed not only through feelings but through dependable actions that strengthen the relationship day after day. Perhaps the most powerful psychological shift you can witness in an avoidant partner is when they begin fighting their own patterns for the sake of the relationship. This is a sign that goes far beyond words, promises, or temporary emotional moments. It reflects a deep internal transformation. An avoidant person may have spent years or even decades operating according to the same protective behaviors. These patterns became familiar, comfortable, and automatic. They help them avoid vulnerability, reduce emotional discomfort, and maintain a sense of control. Yet when they truly love someone, there comes a point where those old patterns begin colliding with a new desire. The desire to keep the relationship strong and healthy. For most avoidant individuals, their reactions are not conscious choices made in the moment. They are habits developed over time. When conflict appears, they withdraw. When intimacy deepens, they become uncomfortable. When emotions become intense, they create distance. These responses can happen so automatically that they often do not even realize they are doing it. It is simply how they have learned to survive emotionally. That is why it is such a significant sign of love when they begin recognizing these behaviors and actively working against them. Instead of allowing old patterns to control every situation, they start questioning them. They begin asking themselves difficult questions. Why do I always pull away when things get serious? Why do I shut down when someone needs emotional closeness? Why does vulnerability feel threatening? These questions represent the beginning of real growth because they require self-awareness and honesty. One of the first ways this shift becomes visible is during moments when their usual reaction would be to run. In the past, a difficult conversation may have caused them to disappear emotionally or physically. Now, even though they still feel the urge to escape, they choose to stay. They remain present in the conversation. They listen. They participate. They tolerate discomfort because they understand that avoiding the issue could damage the relationship. This choice is not easy. It often requires tremendous emotional effort. The avoidant partner may still feel anxious, overwhelmed, or vulnerable. The difference is that they are no longer allowing those feelings to dictate every action. They are learning that discomfort does not have to be feared. It can be managed, understood, and worked through. Another sign of this transformation is their willingness to take responsibility for their behavior. Avoidant individuals sometimes struggle to acknowledge how their actions affect others, because doing so requires emotional reflection. When they truly care about the relationship, however, they begin recognizing their role in recurring problems. They admit mistakes. They apologize more sincerely. They become open to feedback rather than immediately becoming defensive. This level of accountability demonstrates emotional maturity and a genuine desire to improve. You may also notice them making intentional efforts to learn healthier relationship skills. They start reading about communication, attachment styles, or emotional growth. They become curious about understanding themselves and their partner better. They are no longer content with simply repeating the same cycles. Instead, They are actively searching for ways to create a stronger connection. One of the most meaningful aspects of this shift is that it often happens behind the scenes. Many of the battles an avoidant partner fights are invisible. You may not see the internal struggle that occurs every time they choose vulnerability over the distance. You may not realize how difficult it is for them to express emotions that once felt unsafe. Yet each small step represents a victory over years of conditioning. Love becomes the motivation that drives these changes. The relationship becomes important enough to challenge beliefs that once felt permanent. They begin realizing that their old strategies may have protected them from pain, but they also prevented the closeness they truly desired. As a result, they start taking risks they never would have taken before. They open up, they communicate, they stay present, they try again after setbacks. What makes this sign so powerful is that it reveals commitment at its deepest level. Anyone can love when it requires little effort. Anyone can enjoy a relationship when everything feels easy. The true measure of love appears when someone is willing to confront their own limitations and work to overcome them. When an avoidant partner starts fighting their patterns, they are not just investing in the relationship, they are investing in becoming a better version of themselves. Every time they resist the urge to withdraw, every time they choose honesty instead of silence, and every time they remain present despite fear, they are proving something important. They are proving that the relationship matters more than the comfort of old habits. They are proving that growth is more important than self-protection. Most importantly, they are proving that love has become strong enough to inspire change in areas of their life they once believed could never change. Thank you for spending this time with me today. May you continue to grow in strength, wisdom, and the courage to choose love over fear. Until we meet again, keep believing in your value, trust the journey, and never stop becoming the person you were meant to be. Goodbye, and take care. At the end of the day, love is not always loud. It is not always perfect, and it is rarely free from fear. An avoidant partner may struggle to express love in the ways you expected, but when you begin to see these psychological shifts, vulnerability, choosing connection, fear of losing you, consistency, and the willingness to fight old patterns, you are witnessing something profound. You are seeing a person move beyond survival mode and step toward real intimacy. Do not mistake slow growth for lack of love. Real transformation takes time. The walls they built were not created overnight, and they will not disappear overnight either. But every honest conversation, every effort to stay present, every act of reliability, and every moment they challenge their own fears is evidence that the relationship matters deeply to them. That does not mean accepting unhealthy behavior or abandoning your own needs. Healthy love still requires boundaries, respect, communication, and mutual effort. But if you see genuine progress, genuine accountability, and a sincere desire to grow together, do not walk away simply because the journey is imperfect. The strongest relationships are not built by people who never struggle. They are built by people who choose each other while they continue healing, learning, and evolving. When an avoidant partner begins choosing love over fear, they are offering something incredibly valuable. Not perfection, but presence. Not certainty, but courage. Not flawless romance, but real commitment. And sometimes, that is the beginning of a relationship becoming truly extraordinary. Thank you for spending this time with me today. May you continue to grow in strength, wisdom, and the courage to choose love over fear. Until we meet again, keep believing in your value, trust the journey, and never stop becoming the person you were meant to be. Goodbye, and take care.